Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Cloudbusters, the show that helps establish fact from fiction in the world of operating in the public cloud. Now, you may notice, if you've been following along so far, that I'm not in my white void anymore. I'm actually back home. Yes. I can see you're laughing already, Mallory. I know.
Oh boy.
It's quite funny in the context of our guest this week, because actually, having been trapped in Sweden for a couple of months, I'm now free. But it does mean you all get to see the mess that I have at home, including the dog toys and other rubbish that I keep tripping over, which is marvelous. But Mallory, enough of our lovely setup for recording this week, which is we'll try and improve. I know we have a really exciting myth this week and a really exciting guest. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. And welcome home, Alex. It's good to see you back on the island. Today, we are so excited to talk through some myths about multi-cloud strategies. We hear so many different perceptions about multi-cloud. We hear it's too confusing, it's too challenging, it makes it more expensive, not less, on the one hand. On the other hand, we hear let's prevent vendor lock-in, let's make our workloads as portable as possible, let's leverage the best of all of the cloud vendors out there. There's a lot of different preconceptions, and we're here today to talk through them in more detail. Our guest is Janne Pihlajamaa, who is the product owner of Scania Cloud Adoption. Janne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be here.
Now, if you could, let's start with a little bit about you and your background and your thoughts on multi-cloud.
Okay, as you may know, Scania, we sell commercial vehicles globally. We have operations in more than 100 countries and more than 50,000 employees, and we have head offices in Sweden that you escaped from, Alex. But I'm here. And
I'm sad to have escaped, by the way. It's beautiful out there. We might have been close enough to do this in person. Oh, COVID, sorry.
Oh, yeah, true. Some of the background is that in 2011, I think we started agile development journey. And back in 2016, we had then already an understanding that agile without cloud would not give you the speed needed for our what we need from our IT development. And so in 2016 we were in a situation where that if the infrastructure department would not step in and drive the cloud journey, it would be driven by somebody else. And that's where we are. And our Scania's purpose is actually to shift toward a sustainable transport system. That's Scania's purpose today. And we focus on electrification, connectivity, and where we will transform from a truck manufacturer to essentially a software company. That's where we are heading, and we are driving the journey, and cloud is part of that. And while we found out that cloud was needed also, we also found out that if we want the speed, we need to focus. That's one of the findings we had early on, and we defined our cloud strategy, cloud first strategy initially, and it has been a good strategy. I think we have revised that a few times, but it's still the same basic strategy, meaning we focus on speed, global reach, and innovation, because we think that that's where the value is. It's not actually lowering the cost, even if cost is always important. We want to use our funds wisely and so on. But speed, global reach, and innovation, that's where the sweet spot of cloud is, I think. And another part of our strategy was to focus on DevOps teams and not build the operation teams for cloud. So instead, we have this Cloud Center of Excellence team, Cloud Adoption, to support the team's cloud journey. And now, another thing that we found out is that this is not a technical journey, it's not a capability journey, it's a transformation of an organization from a traditional on-prem development organization with the separate operations, etc., to self-sufficient DevOps teams, and that's the journey, and that's the hard part, I would say. And to achieve that and be able to transform the entire development organization is actually to make sure that we can focus. So we had this cloud first strategy, but we also decided to focus on one provider. And this, as you mentioned earlier, this lock-in, yes, it's a risk, but we decided it's a risk worth taking, essentially. And I will think and still think that this strategy has and this focus have served us well.
Awesome, yeah. Thank you very much. Actually, this is interesting. You're kind of starting to trade off two elements here of like, okay, so we have the idea that we need to kind of move faster, get kind of better velocity. Then if we're looking at going to go multi-cloud, then the thing we kind of hear from our practitioners in the field is, okay, each cloud provider works slightly differently. They all have their own billing models. The services perform slightly differently. They have their own programming approaches they recommend. What did you guys do to help figure out or kind of manage it? Was that a concern? I should probably ask first and foremost. And have you found a good way to kind of mitigate that?
I would say that if you take a look at this, what is your strategy? And as I stated, it's speed, global reach, and innovation. The trade-off of having a multi-cloud and being able to switch workloads between cloud providers is that you will not reach those. You can't use the innovation part because you can't use all the latest services that are there. And you don't need you can't reach the speed because you will have to build both of these or several cloud providers, for example. And also it's a training. It's a training of your organization. I would say that if you turn around this and look at it from this perspective, start with one cloud provider, add in another provider when you have this cloud knowledge in place already, and then add in a new provider as you need. That would be a better way to do this. That's my take.
I've seen a lot of different models of multi-cloud. So I've seen some organizations that really are 50-50 with two strategic vendors, and they have custom agreements with both of those strategic vendors. I've seen very small usage of a second vendor for experimental purposes or R&D purposes, but it is not the main provider. And when you have significant spend in multiple providers, Janne, you said something about clarity, and that really stuck out to me, because I think even in that multi-cloud organization, most individual teams will use one cloud or the other. You will have teams that specialize in Azure workloads or Google or AWS. So the organization on the whole needs to make it very clear when to use which vendor. But then the actual engineers and developers, they are probably just in one vendor for most of their day-to-day. So they have that clarity.
Yeah, that is true. So yes, we also use more than one vendor. That's not a secret, and so on. And we use that because we need two vendors, of course. But we use them for different reasons, and those are also stated in our cloud strategy when we should take one or the other. And I believe besides this fear of lock-in, for example, there are valid reasons when you need to go to another vendor to fulfill, and that could be, for example, legal or local local regulations, for example. That could be one thing that, okay. But if you think through how and where you should put your workloads, then they can stay there and that will work fine, I would say. During our years in this cloud journey, I don't think that we have ever had a case where we had to regret that we started and putting in the wrong cloud provider. But you may need to think first how you want to use these cloud providers. That's my idea.
That's a great point. Let's talk a little bit more about that, right? Things to consider or other challenges. So I'll add another thing to consider is data transfer, right? You pay for data transfer out of a region. So if you're thinking about an entire application, really think about it holistically. Don't look at just the storage or the database or the server. Look at the whole thing holistically and make sure that you're running it in the most efficient way possible. Even if a database in another vendor is cheaper, look at the whole application to say this is the right place and the right way to do it.
Yeah, so there are often overlooked aspects of those things, but my main point is that if you start with the new stuff, you have to focus because you can't deliver everything at once, and we have these technical reasons, cost reasons, etc. Why this multi-cloud isn't that simple as it sounds sometimes. But I think the focus is the first thing, and also to remember that your teams are in a cloud journey, and for us it has been this transformation to a DevOps organization and learning cloud, and so it's a huge step in this matter. So for us, it's a lot about that.
That makes sense. I'm just thinking, Janne, because, and I think you were touching on it already, is that the argument we sometimes hear, and actually it comes from two different places if I think about it. You'll sometimes say, we have to go multi-cloud, and it's finance are saying it, and they're saying it's to prevent that vendor lock-in, and it gives us negotiating pressure with the different vendors to make sure we can get the best rate. And then we've got the engineering side of the house who are saying, okay, we have to go multi-cloud because actually I want to use this particular tool or this particular platform service, and it's because it's the best one to solve the problem. Do you feel like one of those is more right, should we say, than the other? And how do you guys approach that when it's kind of, okay, we are going to put this service in a particular place?
We don't actually allow our teams to select themselves.
Okay.
Because they are fanboys of different cloud providers in the development community, and that's not benefiting our overall goal. So we have decided to have one vendor, and that's the main vendor for everybody, except in some specific cases which we have defined, where it is, for example, a service near that we build something that is close to some SaaS service, for example, that we buy. Then it's okay to go that way, but we govern that actually and make sure that it's not a free will to select a cloud vendor here. That's how we address this. But it comes back to your cloud strategy. If your cloud strategy is cost optimization and lowering the cost, then you need to understand that, okay, I will essentially be an infrastructure hosting. It will be infrastructure hosting that we will use the cloud for. But then you will, that's trade-off. Then you will most likely not need or reach this innovation part, for example. which we believe is important. So you have to think through your cloud strategy, and based on that you can then make these decisions.
I'm starting to see an interesting trend where enterprises with a carbon footprint goal are now looking at how cloud can help them achieve their goals. So I've seen an energy company that has a net zero goal examine how their cloud usage helps them. I believe Azure is carbon neutral, and I know 5 AWS regions are carbon neutral. So you can move closer to that goal. Not that cloud will fix everything, but you can move closer with the technology decisions you make. And you'd expect that with an energy company, but I also recently saw it at a large pharma company, right? And so this is another interesting approach. If you already have multiple vendors in your infrastructure, you can leverage them in different ways to achieve business goals that may or may not be directly tied back to the actual application.
We want to become a sustainable, drive the shift towards a sustainable transport system. So we are very much looking into this area as well and working with it, and that is actually starting to become another decision area or decision point to decide where to host. And this is not actually only hosting within one or between two cloud vendors, but it's also in which region we should host our stuff. Sometimes we need to address this, that we need to host close to the users, of course. But if we can, we could select the region in a country which is more carbon neutral.
You bring up an interesting point. A couple episodes ago, we talked about data sovereignty, and everyone in the EU, of course, cares very much about GDPR. But from what I've seen, Germany and Sweden are sort of extra. They're beyond GDPR. And there's often a preference for localization as much as possible for data. So that you bring up an interesting point. It's not just data transfer, it could be data sovereignty and a carbon goal and governance and policies and cloud strategy, right? There's a lot of layers to this.
We have some workloads when we need to consider that, because we need to be able to put them in countries maybe where we have special requirements, legal requirements, etc. But in general, we embrace using serverless technologies, and it is again because of this innovation and speed as a guiding light. We don't want to put middle layers in our deliveries because we believe those will slow down our delivery. So and you have to think that your development resources are scarce. It's hard to get hold of good developers and enough developers in today. So you have to put and use those to their maximum value. And that you will do if you don't spend your time in creating middle layers.
Good point.
So actually,
but there are use cases, of course, where we need to do that.
All our engineers are doing are the stuff that is absolutely value adding and none of the administration whatsoever. Which I think is a really great argument for that. I like that.
Yeah. Well, Janne, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us. I heard some great things from you about how to do this right. So what I've definitely heard is have a plan and communicate across the org. What other advice would you give people looking at multi-cloud?
I would say when you start your cloud journey, focus. That's the starting point. Focus, whatever you do, focus and you will deliver results faster. And you can always add capabilities and further other cloud providers later. And then you can also implement what you have learned with the first cloud provider. So have that as a strategy. I would say you will get faster if you do this. I would also encourage to set up a Cloud Center of Excellence,
Mm.
which should have then core team with some visionary thinkers, those that can execute, of course, team players, and start building that knowledge during your. And another thing is that your teams will be on a cloud journey. It's not just about technical deliveries, it's about transforming organization. Make sure to support that in your journey. You can actually run the actual adoption or your cloud journey in an agile way, meaning that you have these sprints and similar with results and knowledge feedback and feedback loops, etc., so that you can feedback that to the continued journey. That's another good thing that we have used. And for steering, we use objectives and key results. And we think that it gives us a good commitment from the teams and visibility in the whole organization. But that's, of course, something that we do. You can do something else, but we use that. Another thing is that actually you need a management that believes in your cloud strategy and starts firmly behind you, even when it gets tough and so on. And that's something that thankfully we have got at Scania. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, Janne, thank you very much for coming along to share your experiences with us.
Okay.
It's been super helpful. We've really appreciated it. If you would like help with your cloud myth or cloud challenge you're having with your organization, please get in touch with Cloudbusters at LinkedIn or cloudbusters@apptio.com, and we will dig into our pool of experts to help try and prove or disprove that cloud myth. And we look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. Thank you very much, Janne. Thank you, Mallory, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Hi, friends. Mallory again. We of course we want to do a hat at the end of every episode. It's a little fun trick that I like to do. I ordered a hat for this video and this conversation with Janne, and it was supposed to arrive the day of recording. It actually arrived 2 hours late. So I figured, hey, I have this hat. It's a great hat. You might be curious if you've been following along and watching these videos. So I figured I'd show you anyway. So it's not that easy to find a multi-cloud hat without physically wearing multiple clouds on your head. However, Janne joined us from Scania's cloud adoption team. Scania is a trucking company. So of course, what do you think that I did? I ordered a trucker's hat. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.